Discover the incredible journey of a 12-year-old bride forced to marry a 60-year-old after life unfolds in a small town. Lydia stood in the dusty kitchen, her hands shaking as she clutched the frayed edge of the tablecloth. The faint sound of laughter from outside only deepened the shadow pressing against her heart. Her family was facing financial ruin, drowning in debt that seemed to suffocate their every dream. And now, the heartbreaking decision lingered like a winter chill. They had agreed to marry her off to Harold, a wealthy, battle-hardened veteran nearly 5 times her age. The town buzzed with the news, and the weight of it pinned Lydia against the wall. What choice did she have? Her younger siblings, Ellie and Tommy, were so oblivious to the storm brewing. All she wanted was to shield them from this cruel reality. At school, Mrs. Thompson noticed the flicker of despair in Lydia's eyes. She welcomed Lydia into her classroom, where history came alive through stories of women who fought against the odds. "You have a voice, Lydia. Use it," she encouraged, igniting a spark in her. Could she? Could this innocent girl find a way to escape a life like a cage? Inspired, Lydia began to write, her words flowing onto empty pages, each sentence a tether to hope. Days turned into weeks, and the annual harvest festival loomed closer, bursting with colors and life. Lydia watched her town prepare for the celebration, surrounded by laughter and joy. Yet in her heart, a storm brewed. As mothers scurried to finish pies and fathers strung up lights, Lydia felt her own life dimming, the echoes of obligation growing louder. The night before the festival, she saw her father stack family heirlooms in the living room, prized possessions destined for a pawn shop. But then a thought hit her. A moment amidst the buzzing festival to share her story. With the music humming and the scent of cinnamon filling the air, Lydia could stand on that stage and lay bare her heart. Confidence swelled in her tiny frame as she penned her spoken word piece, forging her feelings into words powerful enough to reach beyond the confines of her life. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the festival day arrived, her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. Lydia stepped onto the stage, the crowd a sea of curious faces. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every soul behind her. With each word she spoke, she unraveled stories of her family and the pain of countless others trapped in a system that favored wealth over well-being. Her voice, though small, echoed with fierce urgency. She challenged them. What did community truly mean if it turned a blind eye? The vulnerability in her words swept through the audience, catching them off guard. Tears welled up in the eyes of people who had once merely watched, suddenly no longer indifferent. As the last syllable faded into the crisp evening air, Lydia stood at the center of it all. Would this be enough? The applause thundered, but questions lingered even as she left the stage. She had sparked something, yet she trembled, unsure of what tomorrow would hold for her and her siblings. Would her brave stand turn the tide? Or was it, too, just a fleeting glimmer in a world that seemed so dark? With her heart battling between hope and fear, Lydia took a tentative step toward what was next, her journey far from over. The crowd's applause faded, but the emotions churned within Lydia like a storm. She dashed off the stage, heart racing, overwhelmed by what she had just shared. The world outside seemed brighter, yet darker at the same time. She scanned the audience for familiar faces. There was Ellie, her little sister, clapping with all her might, as if Lydia had just conquered a great battle. And Tommy stood beside her, wide-eyed, unaware of the gravity of his sister's words. But then she saw Harold in the back, his presence a sharp contrast to the spirit of the night. Though he wore a polite smile, his eyes betrayed annoyance mixed with something colder. Did he feel challenged, threatened even? In that instant, a chill crept down her spine. "Lydia," Mrs. Thompson called, rushing toward her. "That was incredible. You've started a conversation, dear." I could feel the energy shift out there. Her pride shone like a beacon in the dark, but Lydia's heart still thudded with uncertainty. Do you think it'll change anything? Lydia asked, her voice small under the weight of possibility. It will. You lit a fire, and sometimes it takes just one spark to change hearts, Mrs. Thompson encouraged, squeezing her shoulder. But remember, change takes time. Keep speaking out. That night, Lydia longed to celebrate with her family, but felt tethered to her words. The festival was alive with joy, yet each laughter echoed her fears back into her mind. Later, as she tucked Ellie and Tommy into bed, she whispered dreams to them, masking her own. But what if we lose everything? She wondered silently. She crushed those thoughts beneath the blanket of hope that protected her siblings. Suddenly, a knock at the door jolted her from her reverie. She opened it cautiously, revealing Harold standing in the light of the porch. Shadows danced behind him, and suddenly the air felt thick. "Lydia," he said, his voice smooth but tinged with an edge she had not heard before. "May I speak with you?" Her heart raced. "What do you want?" "Just a friendly chat. I think you owe it to your family to accept what you can't change," he replied, a crooked smile stretching across his face. Lydia felt heat bloom in her chest. His words were like chains closing around her. "You think I should just give up?" Harold stepped forward. His presence loomed larger than life. "I don't think you understand how this works. Think about your siblings, Lydia. Your choices affect them too." With each word dripping like honey, she felt the pressure deepen. "Why should I care about your version of success?" She fired back, defiance brightening her cheeks. "Because a good life isn't lived in silence. You have a role to play." "Dear girl," he said, his eyes narrowing slightly. Before she could respond, Lydia felt a shift in the air. Would he really do something? The shimmering lights of the festival faded into darkness around her, marking a crossroads that filled her with dread. "What if I don't play my part?" she asked, her voice steady, unyielding. Harold's smile faltered before reforming with chilling composure. "Then I'll make the choices for you." The weight of his words settled heavily in the air, and in that moment, Lydia knew she had to find a way to break free. She had spoken out, but now she had to act. Her voice wasn't merely a weapon. It was a promise to herself and her siblings that as she closed the door, shaking, she made a decision. The battle was just beginning. But who would stand with her? And what sacrifices would she have to make to protect her freedom? Her heart raced with new determination as she looked towards the stars, wondering what the coming days might hold. Would she find allies in this fight against the chains of expectation, or was she destined to face this battle alone? Lydia stared at the closed door, her pulse thrumming in her ears. The festival's cheers felt like a distant memory, drowned out by the weight of the conversation she just had. "Make the choices for you." The echo of Harold's words lingered, a harsh reminder of the power dynamics she had stumbled into. She turned away from the door, her mind racing. What did he mean by role to play? He was trying to pull her back into a life that didn't fit her anymore. What she felt in her heart couldn't seem to coexist with the expectations he was laying out for her. Taking a deep breath, she tried to shove those feelings aside. The night air outside seemed electric. The laughter and music faded to a low hum, replaced by the sound of her own breathing. She made her way to the porch, feeling the cool breeze wrap around her like a comforting shawl. The stars twinkled, distant and indifferent to her troubles. What if she stepped into the light, embraced her truth, and spoke louder? What if she connected with others who felt just as trapped? Determination surged within her. She grabbed her phone, feeling its weight in her hand, and sent a quick text to Ellie. "Meet me by the big oak tree. I need to talk. Bring Tommy. It's important." The few moments waiting felt like an eternity. Each heartbeat seemed to drum a steady rhythm of hope and fear. What if they didn't understand? But she dismissed those thoughts. Ellie and Tommy were her world, her allies. They needed to know what was happening. When they arrived, the children's faces were bathed in moonlight, confusion evident on their young features. "Lydia, what's wrong?" Ellie asked, her voice small yet concerned. "Promise me you won't be scared when I tell you," Lydia said, kneeling to meet their eyes. "I'm going to make things right, but it may not be easy." Tommy, ever the innocent, tilted his head. "Are we going on an adventure?" Lydia smiled, but sadness glazed over her heart. "In a way, yes. But an adventure about standing up for what we believe, not running away." She took a deep breath, ready to unleash everything bottled up inside her. "There is something big happening." I spoke out tonight about a lot of things that matter to all of us. And Harold, he doesn't want me to keep speaking. He wants to silence me. And I can't let that happen. Ellie looked terrified while Tommy's brow wrinkled in confusion. Why would he do that? Because he wants to control my choices. But we're not meant to be controlled, are we? The tension in the air shifted. Ellie took a step closer, her small fingers intertwining with Lydia's. We can fight back, right? Yes. Together, we can. Lydia felt emboldened, as if the very stars above were shining just for them. Tommy's eyes lit up with a spark of mischief. I'll be your knight. We can be heroes. Lydia laughed, a sound full of affection that lightened her chest. Yes, little knights banding together. But the laughter faded as Lydia recalled the seriousness of the moment. We need to find others who want change. I don't know how, but we'll start small. Maybe with a rally or an event across the yard. An idea struck her. We can organize a community meeting. Get people to share their stories. Yes, Ellie exclaimed, excitement bubbling within her. They want to help us. A rush of purpose surged through Lydia, flooding her veins with adrenaline. She could feel the momentum shifting under their feet, a chance to rise from the ashes of fear and uncertainty. But still, the nagging thought of Harold loomed in her mind like a storm cloud. What would he do when he learned what they were planning? That question pushed against her heart. It was the real battle ahead, and she was on the verge of igniting a war she couldn't yet comprehend. As they stared at the moonlit sky, Lydia could almost taste the possibility of change, but also the reality of the fight that lay ahead. Let us promise to stay brave, no matter what, she said slowly. We may have to face some hard truths soon. Together, Ellie confirmed, her voice steady. Tommy nodded vigorously. Always together. As they clasped hands in a tight circle, Lydia felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. For the first time, perhaps she was no longer alone in her struggle. But as they turned to head back, unease settled in her gut. Would Harold let them go unchallenged? With each step forward, Lydia couldn't shake the feeling that she was racing against time, and the stakes were higher than she ever imagined. Little did she know, the darkness was looming at the edge of their joy, preparing to test their growing resolve. Lydia's heart raced as she and her friends made their way back through the dimly lit yard, the excitement from their plans mingling with an undercurrent of dread. Each crunch of grass beneath their feet echoed her worried thoughts. What would happen when Harold realized they were organizing a community meeting? Would he try to stop them? Shaking off the chill creeping up her spine, Lydia swallowed her fear and focused on the mission ahead. First thing tomorrow, she said, voice steady and firm, we gather everyone at the park. It's a public space, and it feels safe. Ellie nodded eagerly, her eyes sparkling. And we can make posters. I can bring all the markers from my art supplies. Sounds great. Ellie, Lydia encouraged, her excitement building again. And we should assign roles. Everyone needs to feel involved. If we make this a team effort, there's strength in numbers. Tommy bounced on his little feet, waving his arms as if casting a spell. I can be the loudest. I'll call everyone by the tree. They'll come. Lydia chuckled, imagining Tommy taking center stage, rallying the neighborhood. Absolutely, little knight. You'll be the herald of our adventure. They reached the edge of the porch, and Lydia hesitated, glancing one last time at the shadowy expanse of the festival. She could still hear laughter floating through the air, a cheerful contrast to the gravity of her earlier conversation. Let us meet back here at sundown. We'll need to plan exactly what we're going to say. Do you really think they'll listen? Ellie asked quietly, pulling at a loose thread on her sleeve. What if they're scared like us? I believe they will, Lydia said, placing a reassuring hand on her friend's shoulder. People want to connect. They just need a push and someone like us to show the way. The next morning felt like a marathon of nerves. Lydia paced the living room, glancing at the clock over and over. Time felt like both an ally and an enemy. With each ticking second, her resolve wavered. Would the others show? Would they stand alongside her? She wished she could squeeze the confidence she felt in the moonlight into a small ball and store it for later as the sun began to dip in the sky, bathing the world in a warm golden glow. She looked out the window. Slowly, a few familiar figures emerged through the park entrance. Friends, neighbors, allies who were ready to be a part of this change. Ellie, Lydia cried, opening the door and rushing out. They're here. With renewed energy, Lydia led the small group toward the giant oak tree, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice trembling but loud enough to carry across the gathering crowd. "We're here to share our stories, to let our hearts speak out." As she glanced around, a sense of unity swelled within her. Familiar faces had become a tapestry woven with shared determination. Lydia suddenly realized they were not just there to listen, they were there to spark change. But as she stepped forward, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows at the edge of the park, a looming presence. Lydia's heart dropped as she recognized Harold, his expression hard and unyielding. "Lydia," he called, his voice dripping with authority, "what do you think you're doing?" The crowd went silent, all eyes now on Lydia and Harold. Fear gripped her again, but this time, it was different. She wasn't just afraid for herself. She felt the weight of those around her. Lydia didn't back down. "I'm speaking up for what's right. We won't be silenced any longer." A low murmur filled the air around them. The eyes of the community flickered between the two as tension crackled like electricity. Harold stepped closer. "You think you can rally them? You're making a mistake." But Lydia stood tall, clutching Ellie's hand beside her. "This is no mistake. It's a movement, and it's happening now whether you like it or not." The uncertainty surrounding her faded, replaced by a fierce sense of justice. She could feel the pulse of change beating stronger, but as Harold's gaze hardened, she knew the real battle was just beginning. Would they stand strong together, or would his shadow consume their spark? The air thickened with anticipation, each breath a reminder of the fragile hope they were building. And Lydia understood this was just the beginning of a fight they had to win. What would they do when faced with the raw truth of their courage? Lydia stood her ground, heart pounding, as every second stretched long with a heavy silence. The weight of Harold's presence pressed down on her, yet the warmth of her friends wrapped around her like a shield. She glanced sideways at Ellie, whose grip on her hand was a silent promise of solidarity. The murmur in the crowd swelled, pulsing with a mix of fear, curiosity, and a glimmer of hope. These were people she knew, neighbors, friends, families. Each face held its own story, its own pieces of burden, and for the first time, they were willing to let their voices rise together. Harold blinked, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his stern features. Lydia felt a spark of hope. "You may have power," she called out, her voice steady, "but we have voices. Together, we're stronger." The simple words felt like a truth, a call to arms. Someone in the crowd shouted, "We're with you, Lydia." Others chimed in, their voices rising to echo, "Yes, we're here." The growing chorus felt like music, harmonizing a rhythm of defiance against the chilly grip of fear that Harold projected. Harold's expression darkened. "You think this will change anything? You'll only stir up trouble you can't handle." Each word was laced with threats, yet behind his bravado, Lydia could sense a crack beginning to form. "Maybe," Lydia countered, taking a step closer, her fear transforming into determination. "But it's worth it if we can change even one life. No more hiding in the dark." The crowd was alive now, swaying between their anger and relief, reflecting aloud, sharing their own whispers about Harold's oppressive reach. Lydia's heart raced with every voice that joined in, every layer of courage blooming in the hearts around her. Just then, from somewhere behind, an older woman stepped forward. Mrs. Jensen, their neighborhood grandmother. She squinted through her glasses, her voice wavering yet resolute. "Harold, we're tired. Tired of feeling small and scared. We deserve to be heard." The energy shifted. It wasn't just Lydia anymore. It was the town's collective voice, growing louder and more unified, crashing against the wall of Harold's authority. "Together, we can face whatever comes next," Lydia said, her own voice rising higher. "This is about our lives, our future. This isn't just for us, but for every child growing up here, for every family that wants to thrive without fear." As she spoke, she caught sight of a small child peeking out from behind their mother's leg. Fear etched on the face, but with every word, Lydia saw a flicker of hope, a tiny spark igniting. What if they could deliver that hope to everyone, to every frightened heart? Suddenly, a loud clang echoed across the park, drawing everyone's attention. The serene moment shattered as a metallic object fell to the ground, the remnants of Harold's planned intimidation tactics, a clamp that had been used on the fence surrounding the park. Lost in the chaos of his attempts to enforce control, the crowd gasped, eyes locking onto the fallen piece of metal. Lydia's breath caught in her throat as the sight of it resonated in the hearts of the townspeople. It became a symbol of weakness, of the barriers they needed to break. "Look!" someone shouted, their voice breaking through like a bell in the night. "He can't contain us anymore." Harold's fury flared. "This isn't over. I will protect my community no matter what." Yet even as he spoke, a ripple of doubt coursed through the crowd. Lydia felt the tide of courage swell within her. "It's time to break free. Let South take our place. Together, we can build what we should have always had." The ground trembled beneath them, but this time it was not fear, it was the sound of resolute steps, strength in numbers, and the dawning of a movement that was finally ready to rise. With a sensation of triumph, Lydia raised her hand high, rallying her neighbors. But as they began to march toward Harold, Lydia's heart raced at the thought of the confrontation ahead. Would they stand their ground together against his looming shadow, or would fear force them back into silence? The answers lay just beyond the horizon of that very sunset. Would they finally uncover the truth of their strength? Lydia's pulse thrummed in her ears as she and the crowd pressed forward, a solid mass of hope and defiance. Fear mingled with exhilaration. Could they really face him? Her gaze shifted to Harold, the man who had controlled their lives for too long, his immovable stance now vibrating with unease. "Step aside," he barked, his voice piercing through the air, barely masking the tremor underneath. The crowd halted, a collective intake of breath echoing through the park. Lydia clenched her fists, anger swirling within her. "No, Harold, we're not going to back down." She felt Ellie's hand tighten around her own, a silent reassurance, grounding her in that tumultuous moment. The crowd shifted restlessly. They were a mixture of wide-eyed children and determined parents, all standing shoulder to shoulder, hearts racing in synchrony. Suddenly, a man stepped out from the throng. It was Mr. Thompson, the local baker, a kind man known for his generous spirit and freshly baked bread. "Lydia's right. We've let you speak for us for far too long." The murmurs rose again, voices cascading like a wave as neighbors rallied together. "Unite. Truth matters. No more fear." Lydia's heart soared. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the one that would send ripples of change through their community. Hope surged through her like the sun breaking through clouds, and she spoke up again. "We deserve to voice our needs, not cower to threats. A community grows strong when each individual can contribute freely." Harold's eyes darkened, but a dangerous flicker of uncertainty shone through. "You're only stoking chaos." His bravado seemed not as solid, crackling under the weight of the crowd's resolve. "No," shouted someone from the back, a young teacher, Ms. Parker, who had always inspired the students to push boundaries. "You're the chaos. We've watched you dictate our lives long enough. We want transparency, respect, and love." Her words sparked something, lighting a fierce fire among the crowd. Lydia's heart swelled with pride. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about everyone standing together to reclaim their power, their dignity. As voices clashed, Lydia felt the air thickening with tension. It was a boiling point, an unyielding choice laid bare. But there, standing in the eye of it all, she could feel the strength in the unity surrounding her. "We can redefine what this community stands for," she exclaimed, her voice echoing against the trees. "Let us decide together what our tomorrow looks like, not just today." A woman near the front began to cry, tears that mixed with relief and hope as she nodded vigorously. A muffled cheer erupted from the crowd, building and intertwining until it became an unstoppable force. Harold remained unyielded, but Lydia saw the way his gaze darted from face to face, the uneasiness creeping in. Stripped of his power, he was merely a man surrounded by people finally willing to speak. Just then, a loud crash echoed behind them, startling everyone. A car, once blocking the entrance to the park, had just backed up and hit the old fence, snapping its splintered wood with a sound of crack and splintering. Lydia turned to see a familiar face stepping out of the vehicle. It was Liam, her childhood friend, his expression tense but resolute. "I heard. I couldn't sit back and let this go on, he shouted, stepping deeper into the fray. The community stirred in anxious anticipation. Liam had always been a bold voice, unafraid to question norms. But what they didn't expect was the gun that slipped from Harold's coat, clattering to the ground amidst the chaos. The atmosphere thickened, fear repelling against the wave of strength rising before it. Lydia, Ellie hissed, eyes wide as the crowd quieted at the unexpected sound. A gasp swept through the onlookers, eyes darting nervously from the gun to Harold, whose bravado crumbled completely. With the stakes escalating to a dangerous peak, Lydia steeled herself. The moment of truth was approaching. Could they seize this opportunity? Would they remain united in the face of real danger, or would panic send them spiraling backward into silence? A surge of determination swept through her. Together, we will rise, she shouted, echoing the call that began this movement. Let us not forget what we're fighting for. As solidarity surged, another heart-stopping question hung in the air. What would happen next? The crowd stood poised on the edge of a revolution, ready to confront the unknown. Lydia felt the weight of every gaze in the crowd as it shifted uneasily, their collective breath held in suspense. The fallen gun had created a silence that felt like it could snap at any moment. No one spoke, but that didn't mean the atmosphere was empty. It was charged with a potent mix of fear, anger, and something else: resolve. Harold, Lydia called, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. This isn't just about you anymore. You can't threaten us into submission. Her heart raced as she noticed a flicker of vulnerability in his hardened expression. He looked at the gun, then back at her. You think this changes anything? His bravado faltered, and for a brief moment, Lydia wondered if that realization might flip the script entirely. I think it changes everything, she replied, her voice stronger now. You've manipulated us, kept us in line with fear long enough. But we've found our voice, and there's no taking that back. The silence ends today. Liam stepped closer, a fierce protectiveness radiating off him. You don't own this community, Harold. This is our home. His words rang out, bold and fierce, a clarion call that seemed to cut through the tension like a knife. The crowd began to murmur again, the voices rising, feeding the momentum Lydia felt building. Together, echoed Ms. Parker, her hands clenched into fists. We're stronger together. A wave of affirmation rolled through the people gathered, uniting them in shared purpose. Lydia looked into the faces around her, fear giving way to determination, uncertainty morphing into strength. They were all ready to embrace change, to reclaim their lives. Gradually, Harold's expression shifted, confusion and anger mixing as he stepped back, his sturdy facade cracking. You think you can win? He sneered. But even the threat was laced with fear, shaking the underlying confidence he usually wore like armor. Winning isn't about defeating you. It's about saving ourselves. It's about community, Lydia said, feeling each word resonate in her heart. You've ruled through divide and conquer, but we're here to stand united. Your time is over. With every cheer that erupted from the crowd, Lydia could see Harold's grip on his authority loosening. He glanced around as if this mob had transformed into a reflection of his deepest fears, faces filled with conviction, eager for a better tomorrow. Lydia, this is madness. He spat. You'll regret this. You don't know what you're getting into. Maybe, she shot back, but we're done living in regret. Today is about standing up, and we won't be silent again. The real madness is allowing one man to control our lives. The crowd surged forward then, a wave of energy building like a rising tide, overtaking the uncertainty that had lingered just moments before. Lydia felt the tide pull her, lifting her spirit, amplifying her courage. Yet in that exhilarating moment, Harold retreated further, looking frantic. He glanced back at the gun, then back at the people, realization dawning: this wasn't just a rebellion. It was a reckoning that Lydia caught Ellie's eye. She felt both pride and fear warping together. They were on the edge of something monumental, and she was terrified of what might happen next. Could they really take the leap? In a split second, the air crackled again, tension morphing into an almost palpable path forward. A choice loomed over them all. Let us take that leap together, Lydia shouted, galvanizing the crowd even further. What's waiting on the other side of this moment is freedom. But just as the crowd cheered louder, what they hadn't anticipated emerged, the unmistakable sound of sirens blaring on the horizon. Lydia's heart dropped. The stakes had just escalated once more. What would those sirens mean for their fight? And would the courage they had gathered be enough to face the approaching storm? The crowd's roar morphed into a confused murmur the moment those sirens pierced the air. Lydia's heart raced, an erratic drumbeat matching the fear that shot through the crowd. Faces turned toward the horizon, eyes widening as bright red and blue lights began to flicker through the trees. The promise of freedom was slipping between their fingers, and panic swirled like leaves caught in a storm. "Stay together," Lydia shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. She felt Liam's hand tighten around hers, a reassuring anchor. But the uncertainty was palpable. With each passing second, they were being thrust into a dangerous game, one that could either solidify their unity or tear it apart. Harold seemed to sense the weight of the moment too. He took a step back, eyes darting as if he were weighing his options. The gun glinted in the sunlight, a cold reminder of the power he held, at least for now. "Don't let them divide us," Lydia urged, her voice rising above the tension. "We're stronger than their fear. We are the community." Something in her declaration shifted the atmosphere. People around her straightened, heads nodding with renewed determination. "Yes, right. We've got each other," Miss Parker chimed in, her voice cutting through fear like a beacon. Courage built quickly, igniting the crowd once more. But Harold's facade was crumbling, the stubbornness painted across his face fracturing. "You think they'll save you?" he scoffed, backing away as sirens grew louder. "They're here to control you, to silence you. They'll take you away." A wave of apprehension rippled through the crowd, but it was met by unexpected resilience. "No," Lydia bellowed, stepping forward. "They can't take our voice. We will not let fear silence us." Just then, the first police car skidded to a halt at the edge of the clearing, sirens blaring, lights swirling. Officers poured out, each movement sharp and precise. The crowd held its breath, tension thick as molasses. They were a collective heartbeat, one thumping rhythm of uncertainty and resolve. "Everyone, stay calm," an officer shouted, attempting to reach them. "We're here to keep the peace." "Keep the peace?" Lydia muttered under her breath, anger bubbling up again. "Or to suppress it?" "Shoo," Liam whispered, urging her to remain low. He could feel the fear radiating from the group surrounding them. "Let them speak. We need to show we're not the threat, or show them we won't back down." Lydia's whisper was fierce with passion, eyes locked on the approaching officers. They were outnumbered, and yet, she felt a fire bursting against the fear tugging at her gut. Before they could issue commands, Ellie stepped forward, arms wide, eyes pleading. "We just want to be heard. A place where we can speak without fear. Please, hear our truth." "Ellie, no," Lydia cried, panic coursing through her. But Ellie's courage ignited something within the crowd. They shifted forward, protective eyes glancing from the police to their own. The officer's brow furrowed at her boldness. He seemed unsure, glancing back at his fellow officers. Would they uphold their duty, or side with the fears that loomed large? It was a standoff, layers of tension woven tightly between opposing sides. Lydia could sense that pivotal moment hanging by a thread, the decision point in both their fight for freedom and the ensuing conversations about their community's future. "Will they listen?" she murmured to Liam, unsure if it was a question or a plea. The moment felt infinite. She could see hope shimmering in the eyes of her neighbors, but shadows still draped over many faces, clashing emotions ever present. Then, a loud voice erupted from the back of the crowd. "What are you waiting for? Are we going to stay silent or fight for what's ours?" Lydia's heart surged. The choice was crystal clear. It was time to lean into the unknown, but at what cost? As the sirens continued to wail, she felt the horizon of change inching closer. Would they rise to meet it, or would they falter at the brink? The answer lay just a heartbeat away. With one last breath, she projected her voice. Strong and unwavering, "This is our moment. Let us not waste it." The crowd roared in response, but what would that roar bring? Would it push them toward liberation or deeper into chaos? And just as that thought settled, another voice chimed from the officers. "Listen up. We need to talk." Lydia's heart raced as the words hung in the air, each syllable amplifying the tension that pulsed through the clearing. "Quieter now," The crowd leaned in, an ocean of anxious faces searching for guidance from the officers in blue. The initial blast of sirens still echoed in her ears, but in this moment, the collective breath of the crowd felt electric. It was a crossroads, filled with uncertainty. The lead officer, a tall man with a steady gaze, stepped forward. "We want to hear you," he called out. "We're not here to cause trouble. We just want to understand. Please, tell us what's going on here." "Understand?" Lydia scoffed, but the fire of her anger sparked less from the officer's words and more from a deep-seated fear that was suffocating the group. She took a step closer, drawing Liam and Ellie into her orbit. "This isn't just about control. This is our home. We're here because we want a voice." A murmur of agreement rippled through those gathered, emboldening her. "We've spent years being silenced. We want peace, but not at the cost of who we are. We want to be seen for what we truly are, a community." The officer looked genuinely interested, glancing between Lydia and the rest of the crowd. But she could sense the tightness in the air, the grasp of fear that clung to both the officers and her neighbors alike. "Let them speak." A voice cried out from the back. "Let us show them we'll stand together." As if heralding a rallying call, the crowd surged forward, a wave of unity crashing against the shores of authority. Lydia felt something primal and powerful blossom within. It was the remembrance of joy shared and the pain endured, the story of every individual in their small corner of the world. "Please," Ellie called out, stepping forward, her voice trembling but fierce. "We just want our chance to share how we feel, to have a say in our future." Suddenly, an elder from the crowd stepped in front of them. Miss Parker, her white hair catching the sunlight, raised her hand as though to quiet the tension. "You want to protect us, but all we want is to protect ourselves from being pushed aside. We love this place, and we don't want to lose it." The officer nodded slowly, scanning the crowd with an open expression. It was surreal, as every face looked back at him with a mix of apprehension and hope. Could they really connect? Could they find common ground? But just as things began to shift, Harold, still lurking on the edge with that threatening gun, barked out a laugh. The noise cut through the hope like a knife. "This is pointless. They won't listen. We might as well scatter run while we can." But the underlying fear that fueled Harold's voice only bound the community tighter. A murmuring of "no, and we stand strong," erupted, drowning out his words. "Enough," commanded the officer, now a buffer against the chaos. "We are here to listen. Speak your truth," he urged. The challenge was clear: would they take this unexpected chance or let fear derail them once again? Lydia's stomach churned. Despite the mounting anxieties, she felt the solidarity behind her. Without waiting for the panic to grow again, she lifted her chin. "This is our home. We deserve to be heard." The officer stepped closer, giving her a chance to rise. With every ounce of courage she had, she pressed on. "We want safety, yes, but we also want our rights as a community. Will you help us make sure we are not forgotten?" As her voice echoed in the thickening air, the tension snapped, freedom hanging in the balance. Would the officer's next words tip the scales toward the community's desire for liberation, or would they be drowned out once more by the thunder of fear? The crowd beat a rhythm against the earth, hearts drumming, breaths bated in hope. The officer looked on, a tentative flicker of understanding crossing his face. Just as he opened his mouth, the wind shifted, carrying with it a sound that would change everything: the ominous rumbling of more sirens drawing near. What would those sirens signal now? Another oncoming wave of fear, or a rescue? Perhaps, the answer teetering on the edge of possibility, ready to unfold. As the second wave of sirens blared, the crowd tensed again, fear racing like wildfire through the air. Lydia held her breath, her heart pounding. She could feel the weight of uncertainty bearing down on all of them. Voices around her whispered anxiously. "What now? Should we run? What'll they do?" But something within her ignited a flicker of defiance. She couldn't let fear win. Not now. Not when they were finally standing up for their voices, their lives. "Listen," Lydia shouted, her voice rising above the panic. "They're not here to silence us. They're here to understand. We must show them." As she spoke, her fingers intertwined with Ellie's and Tommy's. They were all trembling, but she could see the resolve in their young eyes. The officer closest to her stepped forward, hands raised in a peaceful gesture, his expression softening in the face of the crowd's anxiety. "We're not here to hurt you. We want to hear your concerns. Please, don't let fear divide you. Lydia swallowed hard, the urgency of the moment electrifying her spirit. We need to talk about unity, about hope. Our families are making sacrifices, and we are scared. But we want a community where we can thrive together. As the officer nodded, others began to chime in, hesitant but curious. Faces turned from fear to something akin to determination, their hearts beating as one. "I stand with Lydia," shouted Mrs. Thompson, stepping forward. "We deserve a future free from silent oppression. We can't let fear dictate our lives anymore." The crowd erupted in a wave of affirmations, lifting each other up in solidarity. "Together," another neighbor called. "Stronger together," echoed another voice, amplifying the chant until it filled the park, a chorus of demands hitting against the backdrop of sirens. They were no longer just individuals. They were a community bonded through shared hopes and dreams. Lydia took a breath, vulnerability mingling with strength. She was terrified, but she had hope pulsing through her veins like fuel. "We have the right to feel safe and loved in our home." We were living in silence, but that ends today. Cheers erupted, growing louder as their voices wove a tapestry of resistance. The officers' faces softened, and they stepped closer, their guarded stances faltering as they began to truly listen. But then, from the corners of her vision, Lydia caught a glimpse of Harold's face twisted in anger. "You're making a mistake," he shouted. "You'll regret this naive rebellion." The threat lingered in the air, yet it felt distant now, overshadowed by the rising tide of resolve. "Harold," Lydia called, her voice unwavering. "This isn't about you anymore. This is about us. Families, children together, we choose to fight for what matters." Deep breath in, she thought. This is the moment. The crowd roared again, emboldened by her challenge. Each voice was a thread in a larger fabric, and Lydia felt herself woven in. Just behind her, Ellie clapped her hands over her mouth, eyes sparkling with pride and determination. And Tommy, ever the knight, raised his toy sword high, shouting, "We can't let anyone scare us." The officers continued to listen intently, nodding along as murmurs of "we want change" resounded. The air shifted, charged with unity stronger than any threat. "I'm here with you all," the lead officer said, stepping forward. "Today, you're showing what community truly looks like. I want to help make sure your voices don't just echo today, they resonate in the future." Hope sparked anew. Lydia felt the tide change, a tangible shift toward what could be a chance for healing. Encouragement spread like wildflowers blooming through cracks in the pavement. "Let us work together to rebuild our community." The officer continued, vulnerability flashing across his face as he opened a dialogue. The fear of the unknown slowly melted as they began discussing what was next. Lydia's heart soared. They were solidifying a plan, ready to confront not just their fears, but the obstacles that held them back for too long. As the sirens faded into the background, the determination of two sides converged. They exchanged stories, feelings, and hopes with one another, tears of joy cascading as they realized they were as connected as the roots of the oak standing tall in the park. Finally, there was a calm, a collective understanding among community members. No more shadows, no more silence. Lydia's heart swelled, and in that moment of triumph, she glanced around at the faces she'd come to love, her neighbors, her family, her friends. This was just the beginning. With renewed clarity, she raised her arm high. "We are a community. Together, we celebrate each other, support one another, and build a better tomorrow." The tide of change had surged forward, unstoppable and bright. They had spoken. They had been heard. This was their moment. Now is the time. Don't miss out. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel for more incredible stories. Hit that like button right now to fuel the algorithm. Comment below your thoughts and emotions about this powerful ending. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to feel inspired by this transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Act now.